So good morning. We now continue to understand the significance of the chapters preceding the giving of the Torah, which deal with Yisrael. They say, Vayishma Yisrael, the first verse of chapter 18, that his original name was Yeter. The Vav was added to him because of the extra Pasha which goes with his name. So, one of the principles which is surely emphasized here, that Yisro was not descended from our forefathers, and his daughter became the wife of Moshe Rabbeinu, and he himself is the model of a Ger Tzedek, which became ultimately. So the sages say like this is how it's described by the Gaon of Vilna. And this is what he said, the Gaon of Vilna, even today, he insisted that his remains should be buried next to a Ger Tzedek, Rav Pototsky, who was a leading member of the Russian Orthodox Church, and he was in fact one who belonged to the aristocracy of the Russian Orthodox Church. And he, in those times, decided he's going to become a proselyte. He was a disciple of the Gaon of Vilna. Although at that time it was a crime for anyone from the Catholic Church to convert to Judaism, especially somebody who was in the hierarchy, and the police pursued him. And it became known to them where he was hiding, in one of the Bate Midrash. And they worked on him very hard to retract his conversion. They said, if you retract your conversion, we'll help you to get back into the Catholic and Russian Orthodox Church, reach a high position. He refused everything. Then they started to even torture him. They said, look, if you don't, we'll have to torture you till you give up. The Judaism wouldn't give it up, and they said, well, we're going to burn you publicly. So they burnt him up, and was just left with ashes. And the Gaon of Vilna said that he wants to be buried next to him. I had the zchus some years ago to go on a trip and say tefillah at the kever of the Gaon of Vilna, right next to the kever of the ashes of this Ger Tzedek. And when he referred to him, he said like this. The sages say that the people of Israel are greater than the Malachim. It's a Midrash. How do you know they're greater? Because Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Hashem Tzvakot. The name of God, when it's declared by praise of the angels, comes after three epithets. They don't mention the Shem Havaya until they've said three words describing the Kedusha of Hashem. That is the praise of the angels. But the praise of the Jewish people is greater. Why? Because our main verse, a declaration of our covenant with Hashem is Shema Yisrael, and there comes Hashem. We just have to say Shema Israel, then we say Hashem. That's how we come to Him. So therefore we are greater. So he says, who's greatest of all? The Ger Tzedek. Where do we learn it from? From Yisro. Because if you look in chapter 18, which we're studying now, so it says in verse 10, Vayome Yisro Baruch Hashem, Asher Yitzil Etchem Yad Mitzrayim. So he just to say Baruch, and then he mentions the name of Hashem. So it's even greater. So we see here that the Ger Tzedek is greater than the Israel. On the basis of this, I haven't seen it anywhere, but I've mentioned this before in Tefillah. You should think of it when we recite it. Ala tzadikim, v'ala chalidim, v'pil sheir amcho beis Yisrael, v'pitas v'frehem. We mention different categories of saints, and it goes up and up. First we see of the tzaddikim, the chasidim, and the zikne amcho beis Yisrael. Then we speak of Pleitas Sofrehem. Sofrehem, the Sofrim does not just here mean, as we use it today, Sofer as a scribe. It's reference to the greatest Talmidei Chachamim who are called Sofrim. Ezra was a Sofer. Ezra HaSofer, he was the leader of the generation. He wasn't just a person who wrote the Sefer. He also explained the Sefer to everybody else. And some say they're called Sofrim because they count the letters of the Torah, but these are great Chachamim. Who comes after the biggest, highest level, Sofrim? Ger Tzedek. And only after Ger Tzedek, we say Aleinu. Aleinu means all of us ordinary Jews. But the Ger Tzedek, they are more than ordinary Jews, and just the final high level, the highest level, of the tzaddikim. So it's they come before all Am Yisrael. So therefore, this is supported by this explanation that the Ger Tzedek says Baruch Hashem. So I think this is a good introduction to understand the significance. But now I want to come to some other question. That there's a whole discussion amongst the commentaries. When did Yitro come to visit Moshe? Did he come before the giving of the Torah or after the giving? From the order of the verses, it means he came before the Torah was given. But we have a principle, in Muktam Rucha B'Torah. There's not a chronological order in the Torah. And in some ways, since in the discussion that took here between Moshe Rabbeinu and Yitro, he seems to have had knowledge of many of the principles of the Torah, which are only given afterwards. Some want to say that whatever he describes here, above all, how to conduct the teaching of Torah, and also making decisions in all doubtful situations, where he gives instructions on what should be the quality of the judges, and there should be a delegation. So all these matters are really principles of the Mishpatim, which are mentioned in other parts of the Torah as coming from Hashem. So where did he know it from? So the truth is that there are two ways of explaining this. One way, which is adopted also by the Ram, Rabbeinu Nissim, one of the Rishonim, who discusses this. Why is this mentioned before the giving of the Torah? Maybe it only happened before the giving of the Torah, which is difficult. But we say like this: he became obviously a Ger Tzedek, as we discussed yesterday, on the level of Gerot, which existed before the giving of the Torah, which means he accepted the total fulfillment of the Shem Mitzvah B'nai Noach, and he also probably acquainted himself with what it says, what Am Yisrael received already in Egypt. They received many mitzvot, not only the mitzvah of Pesach, but also Bechor and of separation, of other things to replace the Bechor, and the Dinim of Tefillin. Then afterwards, in Morah, they accepted basic parts of the Torah already. And then came the Mon, the Shabbos. So therefore there were quite a few things that the people were commanded step by step before the giving of the Torah. So those he knew. But he seemed to have a great deal of chokhmah, very high level. He was, as it's described here, he examined all the religions, and he came to the conclusion that this was the true religion. But why is it emphasized? That he had to tell Moshe how to bring the laws of the Torah to the knowledge of all the people. He couldn't do it himself. He said, if you're going to do everything yourself, which you've heard from Hashem, and you use it to explain the Torah that you heard from Hashem to the people, you'll wither. Can't do it. So it's like this. That I'm connected with the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu, from his own inner nature, the talents he was given, couldn't speak properly. Then Midrashim about how he lost his power of language. So to go and assume that the Chumash belongs to Moses. I'll tell you something very interesting. Today, in the colleges, maybe some of the listeners here have been to such colleges, even in some Jewish colleges, they look at the Bible just as they look at literature. And therefore, the worst ones amongst the non-Jewish so-called biblical scholars, they twist the Bible, distort everything. The only way they can explain it is by saying that the whole of the Bible is a mosaic. You know what a mosaic is? A mosaic is a type of artistic pattern in which you have different objects and different colors presented. You have a mosaic, it's often a mosaic on the floor. You're building up sometimes certain pictures, but it's made up of many different pieces. So similarly, there's what's called the biblical criticism. They make a mosaic, even in different colors, of different parts of verses, which belong to different sources, and they're somewhat put together. That's mosaic with a small m. But the best ones amongst them, the best ones amongst the non-Jewish scholars, and there are many of them, and in fact when I had to work a bit against the critics, so I found all the critical scholars of biblical criticism. They criticized them very much, and they said this is ridiculous, and they said surely we can prove that the Pentateuch is of Mosaic origin, with a capital M. And this they proved through many different ways. That is the unity of the Pentateuch. There are many such books written by non-Jews, and also by some Jews, the unity. So with the capital M. And some of them would say, well, Moses was a great genius. He was Moses the lawgiver, and Moses had divine inspiration. So the Torah wants to emphasize that certainly mosaic with a small m is ridiculous, and mosaic with a large M is a grave error. As anyone will see if he studies the Chumash more thoroughly, according to Jewish tradition, And we know, as we go on investigation, it becomes more and more proven that the word of Hashem was in the mouth of Moshe Rabbeinu. So therefore the Torah wants to emphasize, when Moses had the vision of the burning bush, he resisted. He said, I am the worst person in the world to be the messenger. He said, Tishlach bi'at tishlach. Please send a messenger. He says to God himself, I recognize you. You are the master of everything, and everything in my life has proven, shown to me how you looked after me, and you want me to do this. He said, I can't do it. I can't even speak. You want me to speak to the people and speak to Paro? I can't speak at all. And Hashem had to convince him, never mind, I know you can't speak. But when he says to him, that's why I chose you. I chose you because I did not want to choose a good speaker. Then people will say, well, he's a good speaker. He can convince the people. Today you can have good speakers, demagogues, who can speak lies non-stop, and then all the people follow him. They follow the liars. They don't follow those who tell the truth. They follow the best speaker. So if the person who tells lies is a better speaker and makes a better public image, and maybe he's got behind him the greatest experts in his society to present the best public image, so give him a public image, fantastic speaker, and then you get crowds, and he has a mass media at his disposal. That's it. And the one, in these days, who controls all the mass media? Not people who speak the truth, people who speak lies. Not people who speak virtue, frequently people who speak sensational crimes. That's it. So therefore Hashem said, I'm putting words in your mouth. Similarly, Hashem wants to demonstrate. You're going to say Moses is a lawgiver. Moses didn't know the slightest thing about how to give laws and how to teach them. So therefore, he'd been given messages orally by Hashem, answers to almost every question. He had the ability, even, they say, that God gave him insight into every person's individual character, and therefore was able to give people good advice. So the whole people queued up 24 hours a day. Your Mama Laila had to attend to the needs of the people. He said, you'll wither, you're not eating enough, you're looking after yourself. After a time, you won't be able to do it anymore. So the Ran says that's why Hashem chose Moses. And that's why it puts Pashas Yisrael. To demonstrate to anyone who even reads the Bible superficially, Moses was not a lawgiver. And the best ones amongst the non-Jews, they say, oh, Moses is a lawgiver. As I've told you before, in this shiurim of my own confrontations with different scientists and historians and so on, when they said, well, Moses was a genius. So the third one said, Moses, he had the potential of great wisdom. According to his great wisdom, he also had great humility. Humility in his instance did not mean he didn't know himself, he knew himself. But he said, these talents which I've got to give by Hashem, and I don't have talents to give laws. I don't have talents really to speak even. It comes from Hashem. So that's why we bring in Yitro, to show that his wisdom was necessary to give Moshe Rabbeinu guidance, how to administer justice amongst the people. That's one aspect. Now, in order to understand more deeply, because what Yitro actually says is really a description of what was the nature of the life of the people of Israel in the desert. Initially, perhaps they would have only been in the desert for some months, and they'd gone to Eretz Israel. For the sin of the golden calf, they were in the desert much longer. And all through their wandering through the desert, which turned up in the end to be 40 years, what did they live on? On the Mon. In other words, they didn't really have to use their time to go and provide sustenance for themselves and their families. It was Hashem who was carrying them in every way. The fountain of water, clouds of glory to protect them, and the well that accompanied them, giving them water. So it says in the Chumash, this is all a test. It's all tests, to test the people. But what do they do most of the time? Most of the time, they spent learning the Torah. That's a simple explanation. That's why Chazal say, the Torah was given to those who eat the man. They were given this, you want to test. Even it says, I give you this test to see Ayelechem Torati or lo. I want to see if they're given the test of the mon, are they going to just use the mon and the rest of the time be lazy? No, they have to build the Mishkan, serve in the Mishkan, and the whole of the people have to learn the Torah. And even it's described here. That's why many say the description here of how they should live and how they can't all go to Moshe Rabbeinu. There have to be stages. The Torah will be taught to Hashem, to Moshe, and partly to Aaron, and then whatever Aaron didn't know, Moshe would tell him, and then they would get together 70 elders and teach it to them, and each one would teach the other one, and then they would bring the whole people, different groups, and that's the way they dedicate themselves to the study of the Torah. So I'm going to follow here the beautiful description on these lines of Rav Hirsch. The greatness of Rav Hirsch in his commentary is he doesn't encumber the reader with all his sources, but the sources on which his commentary is based go right back. I mean, he made a deep study, clearly, of the earliest commentators, apart from Rashi, all the Midrashim, and certainly the Ramban and the Sefono, he studied them thoroughly. He also knew the Akedah Yitzchak and Ababanel, and they all incorporated in his application of these commentaries to the average reader of the commentary. It included also those, at his time who knew German well, in our time who knew English well. It's also translated into Hebrew and some other languages. People who also have been raised on general Western culture. So he says, these verses teach us our forefathers' way of life during out the 40 years of wandering through the desert. Their food was provided them, and their other needs were also provided, their clothing. Their meeting their basic needs was simple and easy, and didn't take up much time. They were not engaged most of the day in those activities that normally occupy the life of a people. So what was their purpose? Really, lidrosh Elokim. As it says here, Kiva Elai Ha'am lidrosh Elokim. Moshe says, what's my life? To have people come here regularly to drashot. Drashot means to find Hashem. How it says, Dirshu Hashem v'uzo, bakshu v'anav tamid. So, in fact, mentioned this one of the foundation banquets or occasions. So it's a dinner of the founding of Dirshu by Rav David Hofstetter. They called it Dirshu. Said Dirshu Hashem v'uzo. Our main task in life is to seek Hashem, and Uzu Eino Zela Torah. You can seek Him also through nature, through thinking, going more deeply. Darash means to investigate more deeply. What's the nature of the world that brings you to Hashem, who creates the world? And the greatest source is the revelation of the will and the word of Hashem in the Torah. Ve'ein ozel Torah. Dish Hashem v'uzo, but that's the strength. And Bakshuvanat Tamid, that is tefillah. You've always got to seek Hashem, who is the source of everything, and V'kashtem Misham, you've got to do Bakasha, tefillah. So Gaon explained that Drasha means Lidrosh et HaTorah. You've got, or even if you're given Torah Shebichtav, the Aseret HaDibrot, go deeper into it, and then you understand it. So to just mean to seek instruction and help from Hashem, it's all the ways in which we are to seek Hashem, all our activities in life and lot. So the words of the Prophet, Dirshuni v'chyu, you must search me, and that's how you will live. To seek God expresses the truth. We seek instruction and help from God, we find God Himself. And our transient lives will be conducted in His presence. Then God will dwell in our midst, and our whole existence will find favor for Him. Rasul Mikdash, V'shachanti b'tocham, the Shekhinah rests upon us. The Mishkan, the sanctuary, is just an expression of this. So, she said like this, in fact, his words in the original, let's say, it's in Germany, in America, you speak of a high school. The high school is the most formative adolescent period that makes you grow up to higher levels of intelligence and investigation. And of course, in the German civilization, it's called the Hochschule, high school. So the task of the people through all the centuries would be to spread the knowledge of Torah amongst all classes of the people. So therefore, these 40 years were the great training period of the Jewish people. It was their high school to find out at a higher level what is the purpose and also the pattern of life. So here it gives all the details. If they have a matter upon which they need instruction or assistance, they come to me, and I have to educate their disputes. These are two ways of seeking God. And they've come to learn God's laws and teachings. This is the general sense of seeking God, to shape our lives in accordance with His will. And the Chukim express God's will regarding our active lives, which they limit within the bounds of what's permissible. Though the life of the spirit and the soul is contained in Torah, even before the law giving of Sinai, they already had laws. The 7 Noachide laws, Milah, Shabbos, Dinim, judgments and Arayot, and also sexual laws, require detailed and complex explanation and instruction. So this explains to us the 40 years of wandering in the desert were the training ground to lead the people to the high level that they could then translate it all into the active life they'd have to lead in the land of Israel. For there's no mon, there's no miraculous well of water, nor are there protective clouds, but the people had to learn, even when you have to engage in all these activities, you've also got to follow all the principles of the Torah. And a certain section of the people should go on living like that. That to be preserved in order that the materialistic life which you have to lead there, with their feet in the ground, will have their head in heaven. Do you have any questions on this? So it mentions this passage at length, many different aspects of the importance of setting up delegated scholars to make up, so after it became the 70 elders in the desert, and then follow later the 70 elders formed the Sanhedrin. And in addition to this, they had to have lower judges and lower teachers. All the more important matters or difficult matters they would bring to the greatest elders, but many other matters could be dealt with by lower level of scholarship. And then this was preserved for later times. If you make a reckoning when it says here, please set up for them, and that actually was done. And it says you should got to find men of ability, God-fearing men of truth, who hate you proper gain, and place over them princes out of thousands, princes out of hundreds, princes out of fifties, and princes out of tens. That means you have for each 10, you have someone to teach them, for each million. Over them you've got the lower court. So the large number of judges comes out to 78,000 judges. With every 7th or 8th man in Israel a judge, teacher that means. Every good and honest man with some knowledge of the Torah is fit to be a judge in Israel. The entire people, each and every member of the nation, is considered a bearer and representative of the Torah. And any 3 upright men of Israel can form a court of 3 and judge a person against his will and enforce the law. So this has to do with authority in the law, but also got to do with teaching the Torah. So this is then used as a contribution which was triggered off through Yitro. So now I'd like you, a few minutes got left, to deal with something else before we go on to the next chapter, the 90th chapter, which is really the prelude to the Decalogue and the great Mount Har Sinai. There's something which is a bit of mystery. We've dealt with it a bit already, concerning Moshe Rabbeinu, who had to flee from Egypt because Pharaoh wanted to execute him because he'd killed the Egyptian. And he came to the place of Yitro and saved his daughters. And it says in the Midrash, and so, that what happened to Yitro, even he was an advisor to Pharaoh, as was also Amalek. Amalek joined Pharaoh, and then when Pharaoh and all his last battalion, they died in the sea, he said to himself, well, now it's my turn to finish off these people. So it says in the Midrash, Vayishma Yitro, Yitro heard That's why it says, late take or pete yarim. A late someone who's a mocker of God, him you have to hit. But the person who is a petty, who is open to all different influences, he will become clever. Leshon Aron. The Midrash says, Amalek, Yitro, they were together in the original plan with Paro. He was also part of the plot to kill the Jews when he was still an idolater, a Kohen Midian, worshipping other idols. So he said, these people are challenging all our religions and our idolatry. So we have to kill them. So Amalek and Yitro were advisors to Paro. When, however, Yitro, he saw what was happening with the 10 plagues, we already saw in the Midrashim, so he started his procedure of Geirut. And when he saw that not only did this God of the people of Israel, that he brought down the enormous, huge empire of which Limit was a part, and brought them right down, and then he even caused Amalek to disappear from this world, the world to come, then he made strong teshuvah. But it says, Ki machu emchet zech Amalek, could be nothing left, vayishma Yitro. So he said, well, now I've decided, definitely, there's no other God in the world except the God of Israel. There's no future. If I go and help Amalek in any way, I don't oppose him, I'll reach the same end. So therefore, Yitro, Vayishma Yitro, he internalized. The Mezah says, what's the connection between these two passages, the destruction of Amalek and the attraction of Yitro to Israel? He says that Hashem had to destroy Amalek, and then he mentioned, don't think that the nations of the world are all Amalek. No, look at Yitro, that's the opposite. Wants to contrast them. That he decided to be entirely on the side of Am Yisrael. Because, but then it says, also furthermore, Vaysu merefitim, Vavo midbar Sinai. How did Amalek come? Because Ravu ideh midibri Torah. Also, when afterwards they traveled away from Refidim, then they were able to come to nearer to Sinai. When they strengthened themselves in Torah, that brought them nearer to Sinai. So, there's nevertheless the following, that we know that Moshe Rabbeinu, in Parashat Shemot, that Vayor Moshe Lashevet El Aish. He came to Yitro, he saved the water. In fact, the saving called Midrash goes further. Since Yitro, he said to his fellows, to his friends, and even to other members of his family in Midian, he told them, I'm going to give up my priesthood. I'm becoming a member of Am Yisrael. I'm leaving them. And the other people were very much against it. So what did they do? They couldn't. They were too frightened also, because Yitro was a strong personality, an important political figure in the whole Middle East. So the shepherds of Midian, the other shepherds, were very cruel. They went and tried to drown the daughters of Yitro, to stop them shepherding their flocks. They wanted to drown them. They say, Ish mitzri tzilanu miyad haroim. Because the words that are used, when they came to tell their father what had happened, how they were saved, they say they saved us. So the question is, what they saved them, that they were able to give water to their flocks of sheep. That wasn't saving them. In other words, that they were almost drowned. When Yaakov came along, Moshe came along, he saved them, pulled them out. He saved this. Vayokom Moshe v'Yoshian, Vayashket Tzonam. So he saved them, saved their lives. So then it says, Vayoel Moshe l'shevet et ha'ish. If you look in chapter 2, it says that Moshe sat at the well, and then there came the 7 daughters, and not only the shepherds drive them away, they tried to even drown them. So Moshe saved their lives, Yoshiani saved them. And then they went and told Reuel, their father. He said, you came back very early? He said, yes. This is chapter 3, chapter 2 of Shemot, chapter 2, Exodus, verse 19. So where is he? Then it says in verse 21 that Moshe Vayoel. Now Yoel does not just mean he agreed. It means he vowed. He vowed he's going to live with this man. And he gave Zipporah, his daughter, to Moshe. He gave birth to a son, called his name Gershom, because I was a stranger in an alien country. So, what does this mean? Sages say, look, if you read between the Vayoel is Lashon Shavua, he made an oath. Because Yitro at that time, he'd already gone a bit on the way of Gedus, but he said, if you got a son, I want that son, you get a son from Zipporah, I want that son to become an idolater. Very unusual. So this interpretation of Chaim Shmulevich, I also learned a bit when I was at Baruch, with the Rashiva Mir, gives a unique interpretation. It's got basis for it. You say like this, that Yitro describes himself as having studied all the religions. That's why he became strong in his Torah. So he said, oh, you can have sons. So you must promise me that one of the sons is going to also study the other religions. And you'll come to the true religion by elimination, like I did. The other one you can educate just in Torah, it doesn't need to know anything else. So that was his intention. In other words, so Moshe said, the first son, I want that son to be brought up, that the whole of the civilization that surrounds us is false. Everything is false. That only accept what Hashem has taught me. Hashem, it turns out afterwards, he taught him a lot of Torah. Only what I know from my forefathers of Torah and what Hashem is going to teach me. But the second son, I agree. So then it turns out that it came in later times that Moshe became the shepherd. He only had one son so far. That son he brought up according to the ways of what he knew of Torah. It did not introduce him to the vast panorama of idolatrous religions. Of although he promised he would do it. So Moshe said, I'll do it with the second son. Then he had the vision of the burning bush and all the revelation of Hashem. And then it says that in the next chapter, chapter 4, it says, Moshe went to Yetzer, according to Hotno. He says, I must go to my brothers now, Hashem told me. I must see if they're still living, what's happened to them. So it says, okay, you go, all those who want to kill you have disappeared. So it says Moshe took also the new son that just been born to him. And then came, it says a serpent came, or a Satan came, and wanted to kill him. But he hadn't done Brit Milah for this son. And this was the son that was supposed to be brought up knowing all the religions, and that way come to the true religion. And that was why his life was in danger. Because Hashem said, if you're going to bring up the same second son according to that manner, then you'll become lost to Torah. And the truth is that Eliezer had a son, although he kept the Torah, but I was the son of Eliezer, but he was a secret idolater. He was the one that brought an idol through the Red Sea. So this is, in the end, of course, Eliezer himself, he was entirely raised up in Torah, but he also had glimpses of the other path, which is promised. Others, he also understood the Torah a bit in the light of the corruption and evil which existed in the idolatrous world, and that affected a little bit his son. So that's the explanation of how Yitro had a grandson who went a little bit in the way of forefather, 2 generations back.